Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be listing my top 10 video missions I'd like to see in Knights of the Force. So naturally I'm in Knights of the Force, so without further ado, let's get on with it. So first off is a classic, in fact the first lightsaber duel we ever see in Star Wars, Ben Kenobi versus Darth Vader. I think this fight would be a very interesting one, and if I was programming it, I would have it to where if you played as Ben, he would actually survive the duel, but not kill Vader. But that's just my opinion. Let's move on. Next one on the list is obviously Rey and Kylo versus the Praetorian Guards. I know a lot of people didn't like The Last Jedi. Come to think of it, I don't really like it either, but there were parts of it I really did like, such as the Snoke throne room fight with the guards. That was really fun to watch. So I would really like to see this sort of mission in Knights of the Force. So, and I would have it so you could play as either Rey or Kylo, but I think the story would play out the same. So let's move on. Alright, next up we have a definite fan favorite, Obi-Wan versus Anakin on Mustafar. I think the Knights of the Force team could do a lot with this fight, and I look forward to seeing if it ever releases. And I think they've actually confirmed they would do this, but it would be the last mission they'd make, so it might be a while before we get this, but it's on my list all the same. Next up we have Anakin and Obi-Wan versus Count Dooku in the Geonosis hangar. I think this would be a really interesting fight, especially if there were two alternate points of view. You could play as Anakin, Obi-Wan, or Count Dooku. So, yeah, that would be a pretty fun fight, I think. But that's just me. Next up we have another excellent fight from the original trilogy, Luke versus Vader on Cloud City. The only problem is, if you play as Luke, that means you lose the fight. But I don't know. I'm sure they could work something out, the Knights of the Force team. Maybe they could have it where if you play as Luke, you actually win the fight, but Vader tells you he's your father anyway. Speaking of Vader, what's wrong with his neck? Never mind. Anyway, moving on. Next up we have yet another Darth Vader fight, this one being Vader versus Ahsoka from Star Wars Rebels, one of my personal favorite fights. But again, I'm not sure how they would work this one out, because if you play as Ahsoka, that means you lose the fight. I don't know, I'm sure they can come up with something. They're very smart people, so... Moving on. Next up we have Luke versus the Rancor. I think this would be pretty refreshing after all the lightsaber fights they have, to have Luke fight the Rancor. And I think I would have it so he wouldn't have his lightsaber. Or maybe, I don't know. We'll see what the Movie Tools team, not the Movie Tools team, I'm sorry, Knights of the Force team will do. So, moving on. Next up is another fight from the sequel trilogy. This one being Rey versus Kylo Ren on Starkiller Base. I know a lot of you really don't like the prequel trilogy, but I rather like this fight, and I'd like to see it reimagined in Knights of the Force. And again, I think I would have it where if you played as Kylo, it would play out differently. In this case, he would probably win the fight and take Rey to Snoke. I'd really like to see that. Next up we have Obi-Wan and Anakin versus Count Dooku on the Invisible Hand. I think this would be a very fantastic fight, because it was one of my favorites from the prequel trilogy, and I think the Knights of the Force team could really make this fight stand out from all the rest. So, moving on to the final fight. Final fight I'd like to see in Knights of the Force is one from the video games, namely Kyle versus Jarek in the Valley of the Jedi. Unfortunately, they haven't added Jarek into the mod yet, so I cannot showcase him like I have the others, but this would be a really good fight. And I know their policy on Jedi Outcast content, but they haven't said anything necessarily about Dark Forces 2, but we'll see. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that little video of my suggestions for the Knights of the Force team. I hope they take some of them into consideration, and I'll see you on the next video.